Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 52 of Code Lyoko / the final episode of Season 2, The Key. And this is another big one. Reeling from the revelation in the last episode, namely that Aelita is not only human but the daughter of Franz Hopper, the group is going through some stuff. Essentially, Jeremy has been continuing to go through Franz Hopper's diary to try and find any more information that he can, while Aelita is still trying to wrap her head around the fact that she is actually human and essentially had her life stolen from her when she went to Lyoko. However, as Jeremy looks through Franz's diary, he's able to actually piece together some bits of information. We get some more background on XANA and why Lyoko was created. I'll get into that when I'm done with the summary. But looking through it, he does manage to find two very important pieces of information. One that it turns out he was wrong. Xana didn't actually implant a virus into Aelita that connected them to each other. He actually took a fragment of her being. Jeremy's wasn't able to figure out what that fragment was, but by holding on to that fragment, it essentially connected them together. And as long as he has it, that's what keeps them together. If they can get that fragment back, then their connection is gone. So Aelita is free. However, this also kind of leads into the second thing. The reason why Xana took it and why he wants Aelita. It turns out that when Franz Hopper virtualized himself in Aelita, he essentially placed within them what he called the keys to Lyoko. Essentially, if you have access to them and you know the proper back doors, you can essentially have full control over Lyoko and everything in it. It would give you unlimited power in the computer and essentially give you unlimited access. That's why Xana has been gunning for Aelita this whole time. She has the keys to Lyoko within her, and by stealing her memory, Xana would be able to get his hands on them and essentially have enough power to escape the supercomputer and delete Lyoko. However, as such, the group thinks that all they have to do to stop Xana is to go into Carthage, and Jeremy believes that Jeremy believes that he's found where the fragment that was taken from Aelita is, and if they can just go inside and get it back, then everything's square. Unfortunately, Aelita is not all for that. As I said, she's still dealing with a bit of identity issues, and the thing is, she justifiably doesn't want to go back onto Lyoko right now. She doesn't want to go back on Lyoko. As she said, her father essentially stole her life from her. Everything that she could have been was just taken away from her the instant she went onto Lyoko. Whoever she was, whatever she was going to aspire to be, it's just gone. And essentially, Lyoko took her entire life from her. She knows nothing else but that. And it's actually rather shocking, and it's understandable why she does it. Why she doesn't want to go back onto Lyoko. She doesn't want to be tied to that place anymore. It's made even worse by the fact that when they learn that she has the keys to Lyoko in her, as she knows that if she goes back on Lyoko, Xana could try and steal them again, and that combined with her PTSD towards Lyoko now, she actually gets desperate and more afraid. It gets to the point where she goes to the factory and actually shuts down the supercomputer. It knocks her out, yeah, but it makes sense why she does it. And the only reason it's turned back on is because Jeremy went to check on her and found her passed out and had to turn it back on. And her justifiable reaction essentially, I thought I could just turn it off and save us all. And Jerry's like, we will save it all together. We'll move forward. It's actually really nice and some really good character drama really helps push everything forward. But as such, Jeremy, after he revives her, pretty much just tells her that you're not in this alone. We're gonna work through this together, and we're gonna push forward. You're gonna have a new life. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. My dog was screwing with what I'm using to prop this thing up. But anyway, yeah, Jeremy pretty much tells Aelita that they're in this together and they're gonna forge ahead, and they can pretty much make her free. As such, with that in mind, Jeremy calls the group, and they decide that they're gonna, and they decide they have to go to Carthage and retrieve Aelita's fragment. As such, they go through the whole kit and caboodle as they virtualize into the ice sector, travel to Carthage, and just kind of go through the whole thing of trying to navigate it, like going to the first room, finding the key, getting everything in order, and for the most part, things seem to be going a little smoothly, a bit too smoothly, actually. When the group arrives at the because at first, like when the group arrives at the ice sector, there are no monsters there to greet them, and when they go to Carthage, while they do meet some resistance, it's almost a bit too easy to take care of them. It's a little too easy to take care of them. As such, as it gets to the point, and even Odd, who says he normally feels sick when he takes the ride to Carthage, says he didn't feel that this time. So things seem to be going a bit too smoothly. As such, when the group goes through Carthage, they manage to make their way to the room where Aelita's fragment is, and they can just see it kind of floating there on a pedestal, and they think that they can just get that back, then they're square. However, it's like on a long bridge with a gap in the middle. But however, as they're running down that bridge, some more creepers show up and start distracting them. Aelita's managed to get ahead, but unfortunately, Odd, Yumi, and Ulrich are distracted with the creepers. After taking more out, they manage to take out most of them, but they pretty much realize this is a useless battle, and ultimately decide that they need to just go forth and help Aelita. As such, they run forward to help her get across the gap, though Odd ends up getting devirtualized. But Yumi and Ulrich do manage to jump Aelita across, though at the cost of Yumi getting devirtualized as well. Unfortunately, even when they get across, XANA is not done, as he pretty much causes the whole room to start collapsing, and as such, Odd and Ulrich and Aelita just have to make a run for it across the platform, and they almost manage to make it, but unfortunately they lose their footing and almost fall into an abyss until they get some unexpected aid, specifically from two mantas. At first I think that this is XANA just doing his thing. However, the mantas are glowing white. It turns out that these are mantas that Franz Hopper co-opted, so they work for him, and so instead of doing these two, they instead fly them up to where the fragment is. As such, everything seems to be going well. They think Aelita goes up to the fragment, she grabs it, and then it shatters. And the room begins shaking again. It turns out this was all one giant trap. That's why things were going a little too smoothly. XANA planned this, and honestly, I think it's a perfect gambit. In this case, now that they know everything, he decided, okay, he essentially held a string of cheese in front of them and said, okay, well, here's the thing you want, come and get it. And then just before they got it, turns out it wasn't a string of cheese at all, it was in fact a nut. But if you know pretty much what I'm getting is that he lures them exactly into the place he wants them in by essentially creating a fake lure. And at this point, and unfortunately, as the room begins shaking, more things begin collapsing, and unfortunately, that results in most of the platforms being destroyed, the mantas that Franz Hopper was controlling being crushed, and Ulrich being devirtualized, pretty much leaving Aelita all alone on Lyoko, and right for the Schifozoa. Nothing is there to defend. She's completely undefended. There are no monster. There is no way for her to run. She is essentially trapped, and the group realizes this. And unfortunately, all they can do is watch as the Schifozoa grabs Aelita and steals her memory. I'm not kidding. The Schifozoa actually manages to steal all of Aelita's memory. And the instant it does, I admit it's actually kind of a little shocking, and yeah, it does kind of make you go, what the hell? And it made me even worse by the fact that you see it just drop Aelita's body, and she just stops moving like there's nothing there, and it just continues to get even worse as you see Lyoko start to go dark. First, Carthage seems to go dark as all the lights go down, and the data stream just seems to start flashing out of it. Just starts to shut down a little, so it just starts shutting down bit by bit, and then it cuts to Lyoko. And we see that across each of the sectors, multiple towers are being activated by XANA. Essentially, XANA is gaining control of them, and when all of them are active, you see the black smoke smoke slash goop that is XANA just ascending into the sky, just showing that he is now free. It's actually rather shocking, and you don't even know how that's even possible. And you're just like, oh my god, the bad guy won. He got exactly what he wanted. He is free. He is now no longer constricted to the supercomputer. And Aelita is seemingly empty now. There seems to be nothing left of her. Seemingly. Not all hope is lost. As Aelita is lying there in Carthage, suddenly a strange white orb, suddenly she's surrounded by a strange white orb, and we start to see memories. We see Aelita as a little girl playing it when looks like in a winter shack. We see her making a snowman, interacting. We see her getting the Mr. Puck. We see her getting Mr. Puck, and we actually see her. We see her getting taught piano by her dad, and we even get to see her mom. It's actually rather sweet and heartwarming, but things start to change as at one point you see her mother literally fade out of the picture, and then it flashes forward more as we see Aelita and her father now living at the Hermitage estate. And we see her come home. We see her dad playing on the piano. She goes up to her room, and we see the events that sent her and her father to Lyoko. As the men in black from Aelita's visions from a few episodes back appear at her door, and she and Franz just go running as the men in black pursue them. They manage to block the way. They manage to run at the back of their house and block and barricade the door so they don't go after them, to delay them. And Franz and Aelita run into the sewers and run straight to the factory. Ultimately, the flashback ending when Franz Hopper gets everything ready and has himself and Aelita digitized and sent to Lyoko. As Aelita remembers this, she suddenly comes back to life, and with her, Lyoko starts lighting up again. We see Carthage start going up again, and all the towers that XANA's activated start deactivating, start turning from red to blue, and suddenly Lyoko is back online. At which point Jeremy is able to devirtualize Aelita, and she just kind of passes out. As such, it cuts to later in Jeremy's room, and we essentially get a status update, and we learn exactly what happened. It turned out the fragment of that Aelita that XANA had stolen was her life on Earth before Lyoko. It's why she thought she was an avatar that lived on Lyoko rather than being from Earth. When she went to Lyoko, XANA took that from her, and he's pretty much had it ever since. As such, that orb and the light that Aelita saw, that was Franz Hopper. It was him managing to find that fragment and restore it to her, and using that he was able to essentially restore Lyoko. Unfortunately, though, that's kind of a hollow victory, because in the grand scheme, it's over. While Aelita is no longer connected to XANA anymore, he's gotten what he wanted. He got the keys to Lyoko, and he's free. He's no longer restricted to the supercomputer. He can go anywhere online, and he's pretty much in control. As such, the group wonders exactly what they're going to do next, and Jeremy says, "We'll just keep fighting." XANA is out there, he's got all this power, but for everything he does, we'll fight back. We'll find ways to beat him. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. That's who we are. We will fight him. And Aelita even concurs, saying, "Yeah, I agree, because it's my job. Like, I'll keep fighting, because that's my job." But the group just reassures Aelita, "No, it's our job." And they all just kind of hold hands together, and just letting everyone know they're there for her. They're her friends no matter what. And yeah, it's actually a really nice scene, and it's a really nice scene that helps bring everything together. So, on the whole, yeah, I actually really like this episode. It's really well paced, and I I think what makes it better is that it's straight off of the heels of the last episode, and there's some really good drama in the episode. As I said, the stuff with Aelita, I think, is a very realistic reaction. Aelita is most likely suffering from. Aelita is pretty much suffering from an identity crisis here. Again, because Xana stole her memories from when she lived on Earth with Franz, she thought that she was part of Lyoko. And so last episode, to suddenly learn that she actually is human, it really does feel like it definitely feels like a punch in the gut. And she's processing it the way anyone would probably process it. She's in denial. She's angry. She's scared. She's sad. She feels like her life has been stolen from. She feels like her life's been stolen from her, and that she's essentially been living a lie. Made even worse by the fact that all of this is technically her father's fault. Why she lost her memory, why she was trapped on Lyoko, why Xana is after her, it's all her father's fault. He sent her straight into Lyoko and put the keys into her and made the keys a part of her. So essentially, all of this is caused by her dad. So everything Aelita does in the episode is justifiable. There is a lot there. It definitely feels like that she's just trying to wrap her brain around this, and she doesn't want. And even when faced with all these facts, she doesn't want to accept it. She's trying not to. And even again, she feels like that she's essentially been lied. She feels like that she has lost her life. Like I said, she was trapped on Lyoko for years, and whatever life she could have had before, it's gone. She lost it the instant that her dad sent her to Lyoko. It's actually rather sad, and when she finally decides to just shut down the supercomputer, even though that causes her to pass out too, it makes sense. It's kind of like it's almost suicidal, actually, and it's very scary, especially for Aelita. It's one of those out of character serious business moments, because she doesn't want to talk to the group, she doesn't want to go back to Lyoko, and all of these are for justifiable reasons, but at the end, but ultimately what helps her get back on track is Jeremy finding her and telling her, you're not alone here, we're with you, and we're with you, and yeah, you had your life stolen from you, but you have it back now, and we are gonna keep going forward together, because that's who we are. It's actually it's really sweet, and it's made even better by the ending. We finally get to see Aelita's life on Earth. We've seen snippets of it throughout the show, but now we actually get to see what kind of life she had, seeing her interacting with her father and mother. And it's made even worse by the fact that the implication is that her mother might have been killed, because early in the episode, when Jeremy's looking through Franz Hopper's diary, we actually learn why he created Lyoko, Carthage, and yes, Xana. It turns out that when Xana was impersonating Franz, he wasn't lying about why he was created, sort of. Essentially, Carthage was a government project that was supposed to essentially be a countermeasure for enemy. That was essentially meant to be a countermeasure for enemy weapons and so forth. It was very top secret, very under the very. It was very sorry, I'm getting tongue tied. It was very top secret and required a lot of and essentially it was very black ops, to the point where if it was discovered, scrub everything clean, we can't have anything tie back to us, type of thing. Which is where Xana comes in to try and pretty much save his own ass. Franz Hopper created Xana to destroy Carthage if worse came to worse. And honestly, with this in mind, it actually kind of helps explain Xana, and by extension how he was able to do the things he was able to do. As we've seen throughout the series, Xana is able to interact with the real world by activating towers and screwing with things. And the fact that Xana was essentially a program that was created to, wipe the slate clean, it explains why he is the way he is. His programming started small, but he learned and adapted. As we've seen throughout the series, Xana is very capable of that. He does learn, he does pay attention, and he does grow. In the first season, he was kind of when you actually kind of saw him acting as a computer, it was either just kind of standing back and watching, or just schadenfreude at other people's suffering, not counting when he goes over the top, because I thought that was stupid. But in this series, we've seen him be more calculating, more cold, more angry, and taking more pleasure when his plans are going into fruition. He's better actor, he's better at selling. He's actually learning and improving. So I guess it would make sense why he would do that. And I guess it kind of would make sense for the project because essentially if Franz Hopper created Lyoko to essentially screw with enemy systems, it would explain why XANA was able to interact with the real world, because through Lyoko you could pretty much screw with anything on Earth if it was electronic and just go nuts with it. Just activate a tower and boom, you've got something. You can do whatever you want. So it would make sense why XANA. So it actually, all this explains why XANA is the way he is. He was like a program created to essentially wipe the slate clean, and Lyoko was created to essentially be the ultimate program, essentially meant to be invasive into enemy systems, and XANA just hijacked everything. It actually kind of makes sense, but again, it goes back to but with that in mind, the reason Franz Hopper wanted to go in Lyoko is because he was getting paranoid. He was getting scared that people were going to come after, that some people were coming after him. And it might have been justifiable because we saw that Aelita had a mother at some point, and the heavy implication is that she was killed. It could have been that she just got sick and then died, or maybe she was offed. I don't know. They don't say, and but considering the circumstances surrounding Franz, it could have easily been that she was, yeah. It's actually really kind of weird when you stop and it's actually kind of creepy and disturbing when you stop and think about it. But it also helps explain why they went to why Franz Hopper went to Lyoko. We saw, and it kind of helps explain why this sense of paranoia is what helps explain why he went to Lyoko. When we saw Jeremy was going through his diary, we saw Franz Hopper getting more frantic and desperate, like someone's watching me, someone's trailing me, and we see in his paranoia he's getting more and more unstable. It's to the point where it's revealed that that the Return to the Past function, which it's implied that XANA was the one that created it, which explained why they were connected. That XANA created that, and he thought that, well, with this I can create my ultimate. It gives me more than enough time to create my final project, which is most likely the keys to Lyoko. Essentially, as he got more and more paranoid, he started doing more riskier experiments involving XANA, the supercomputer, and Lyoko. And when the government finally came literally knocking at his door, he finally set it all in motion, not knowing that XANA was going to betray him. It's actually rather twisted, and I kind of like that. But then, of course, we've got the story itself. I already mentioned Aelita and her PTSD and almost suicidal tendencies. That actually is real. That is legitimately good drama, but there is still a mounting sense of tension when they learn that all they have to do is get Aelita's fragment back and they can shut down the supercomputer. It's like at the end of season 1, except it's like at the end of season 1 when they finally got the devirtualization program for Aelita. You feel like this is coming to a close. But again, like before, XANA screws with them. He creates a false lead that they go running after like idiots, which, let's be honest, we'd all do the same thing in their shoes. And ultimately, they just fall right into XANA's trap, leaving Aelita alone when the Schifozoa finally arrives, and giving XANA an actual honest-to-God win. Like before, when they managed to devirtualize Aelita, we learned that while that was technically a win, they still managed to free Aelita. XANA only managed to get by because he had something, which we later learned he had all along. So that was technically still their win. The ball was still in their court. XANA just happened to have a trump card. Here, though, there's no trump card. XANA played them, and he came out the winner in the end. Yeah, they still managed to get something back for all their efforts. Aelita now has her memories back when she was on Earth, and she's no longer connected to XANA. But even with that, they're still pretty much screwed, because now that XANA is no longer limited to the supercomputer, even if they turn it off, he would still be around, and he would still be a threat. That's a big problem. So they really need to be careful. So now it's essentially going forward now the heroes are stacked with even bigger odds. And again, when everything goes wrong, you do genuinely feel like a what the hell type of thing. You definitely feel like this, like something like this is just some very big serious shit. Like at the end, it's like at the end of the last episode where XANA almost did get a win, but they only managed to survive thanks to the intervention of Franz Hopper. Here, even with Franz Hopper's intervention, they still lost. And at the end of the episode, the group is unsure whether Franz Hopper is still alive after he restored Aelita. If he's still in Lyoko, or if he disappeared too with Lyoko, or if he disappeared. They don't know, but at the end, it's something it's left open, and the group says that regardless of what XANA's doing, they still have to keep fighting. Even if they can't just turn off the supercomputer, they need to keep fighting. It's actually really good and very motivational, and it leads to that very sweet moment where they all just hold hands and reassure each other they're there for each other. They'll keep fighting. That none of them are alone in this. It's really nice, and it's really good, and I think it's a good way to end the season 2. If I have to list any problems with the episode, it's the B plot. It's borderline useless. There's a prom going on. There's some stupid shit with Ulrich and Yumi, again with the will they, won't they, as William, who's been absent for several episodes, tries to ask out Yumi, but she says no. Ulrich, being a dick, thinks that they are going together, so he says yes to Sissy when she asks to want to go. Then he stands her up, goes to talk to Yumi. He never apologizes to her about him jumping the gun, because she later did try to ask him, and he was giving her the cold shoulder, because, as we've established, Ulrich is a dick. But honestly, that stuff just kind of water under the bridge. It's pretty much just forgotten. It has nothing to do with the climax. So, yeah. But on the whole, yeah, the season 2 finale I think is really good, and it definitely brings everything together. It's got some legitimately good character drama, nice tension, some nice heartfelt moments. So, and the ending I think the ending really clenches everything together, as the bad guy is now a lot stronger. The heroes are now going to have a harder time fighting him, but they're going to keep fighting irregardless, because they're the heroes, and they're not going to let him get his way. It's nice. It's definitely great, and it definitely makes me pumped to see the next season. So yeah, overall, really good episode. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and next time we meet, instead of going straight into season 3, we're going to be taking a slight detour. We're still going to be doing Lyoko stuff, but for next week, we're going to finally be looking at something that I think this show has needed for quite some time. Namely, we're going to see how these group of kids first discovered the supercomputer, and what set of events led to XANA waking up. So, yeah. Tune in next week as we look at part 1 Tune in next week as we look at part 1 of XANA Awakens, and as always, I hope you have a good night, and, take care.